Base Ireland, we were set up in 2014. We're a mix of conventional and organic farmers, mix of tillage, dairy, beef, sheep, and our main aim is farmer-to-farmer knowledge sharing. Like we're all kind of into this biological farming as well, so we said we'd set up a group, we'll spend our own money, do our own trials, and farm-scale trials, and see how we get on. So if you have, if you're in the group and you have an idea, you tell lads what you're going to do, go off and do it, and you report back. And the good thing about that is, if you do make a mistake, or if, you know, you can tell the lads, this hasn't worked out so well. So we share the stuff that works and the stuff that doesn't work, and we try and move on as a group together. So it's good that way. BASE stands for Biodiversity, Agriculture, Soil and Environment. We're a farmer-led group, and the good thing is we're not selling anything. We're trying to help each other out. Conservation agriculture is a farming system that promotes permanent soil cover, minimum soil movement, and diversity of plant species in both cropping and pasture situations. The best of what we're trying to do is we're trying to mimic nature and work with it, not against it. The home farm, that's conservation agriculture there. You see the first picture that we're direct drilling a cover crop into stubbles. Number two is that cover crop, and these cover crops usually we try and go for a 6 and 7 way mix. So just covering ourselves really, diversity of roots, diversity of plants. You've heard all that over the last few days. I'm farming in Tipperary. It's a suckler farm with 45 acres of barley is usually what we do. So small bit of contracting as well. That's our livestock. It's not it's a mix. So what we've always done is when we go to the mart, buy something that we like the look of. So we have a mixture of everything there. But at the moment, we're running Red Angus bulls and stabilizer bulls. A lot of our cows now are around 600 to 650 kilos. And grazing management then is most of the farm, apart from the silage ground, has been fenced into 10-acre paddocks. So that allows us then to split that up into temporary paddocks, depending on how much grass is in it, grass growth rates, and that sort of thing. So you can manage our paddocks then that way. Our aim is to leave a good bit of residue behind as well. So if grass gets strong, then we'll pack in the cows and calves tightly and try and get them to graze it down fairly well and leave a residue on top of the surface. The conventional theory is if you do that, if you have strong grass, cut it out, put it into silage, and what happens then is you accelerate your rotation as opposed to slowing it down with the way we're working it, and that lets the rest of the grass grow, and we're saving on fertilizer then because we're not constantly eating grass at a short stage. So, and it's suckler cows too. So that's the cows. That's the residue we'll have left. Then you'll see quite a bit of grass and residue and stalky bits left there. The picture on the right-hand side is what comes back up. If you graze down heavy silage ground and trample it in, you see a lot of clover in the sward there. We didn't sow any clover. That came back up after a high-impact grazing. So, the way we're all hearing the conflicting reports. You should be sowing a herbal ley. You should be, changing your grazing management. And so there's a lot of seeds in the soil bank, so maybe that's the way to go as well. So there's lots of information that way. So, and you see an increase in earthworms as well. A small little factor about earthworms is the worm casts have 25% more available nutrients than the surrounding soil. So if you can up your worm numbers, you can increase your soil fertility without actually spending any money. So if you can increase your carbon percentage as well, then you can hold those nutrients there as well. And your water infiltration, hopefully, will increase as well. This is an Albrecht. Well, it is. You can't really see it. But this is an Albrecht from home. Years ago, we were having problems with grass tetany, sheep on their backs, that sort of thing. And we did Albrecht tests, and on some of our fields, our potash percentage was higher than our magnesium percentage. And what was happening there was the plant was taking up the potash first, and the plant was taking up the potash would go into the animal, and so they were essentially suffering from magnesium deficiency. Magnesium deficiency in excess of K. So if you do a Google on that, excess potassium, what's that used for? Inmates on death row, they'll inject potassium into their bloodstream to kill them. So it's trying to get all these little nuggets of information together and finding out if that's your problem or where your problems might lie. So potassium chloride is what they inject into those bad boys, and that's the most popular K fertilizer that's used in the country. So magnesium levels we find in a grazing situation are very important. So how do we sort that out? What we've done is we've started spreading Kieserite on the farm, and it's magnesium sulfate. Some of you might know it better as Epsom salts. And if you are deficient in magnesium, you get tight muscles, stomach cramps, things like that. And if you want to relax in the evening, you throw some Epsom salts into your bath. So it's all kind of linked together. Cropping-wise then, it's a very simple rotation because we're in Gloss. So what we do is we're doing the min-till and the cover cropping. So what we do is we'll go with a spring barley, and we'll direct drill then. After we've cut the barley, we'll direct drill in a 7-way mix, cover crop. And what that does is, if the weather doesn't suit some of the plants, you might have 4 plants in it. So we're only covering ourselves. And then we'll put weanlings into it then when that's grown up. And what we'll do is put them into about 3 or 4 acre paddocks. We won't strip graze it, because if it gets wet, you strip graze it, you're going to plug it up, and that's no good if you want to direct drill into it then in the spring. So we'll make paddocks. If it gets really wet, we can increase the rotation, get them through it quicker, and it's a bonus, and it's good to have the cattle out later on in the year. Use a 135 horsepower tractor on a 4-meter drill. Cover cropping there, as it says. We've cut out insecticides. We haven't used any insecticides in the last 5 years. So, there's no point really, is there, if the aphids are resistant to most of the insecticides anyway. So we don't want to spray that, because if you have beneficials in your cover crop or on your soil, you don't want to kill them off. And it's usually the aphids that will come back quicker. There's some of our cover crops. You see the radish there, all the worm casts up at so worms really like the tillage radish. So that's about 2 inches up off the ground. It's just, they love that sort of thing. Soil structure, water infiltration, and grazing. So the good thing about, if you're not strip grazing or making animals eat every plant in it, they'll kind of poke around, they walk some of it into the ground, and they can eat what they want and leave behind anything that's not ideal for them. So conservation agriculture then, it's really interesting. There's so many different ideas out there, and once you learn one thing, then you hear about another thing, and then there's another idea, and there's another idea, and there's another idea. And it's really interesting then, like this conference, you get one idea and you go away and you think, oh, that's good. And then there's something else and something else. So it's nice to have, if you can go for a healthy soil, lead into healthy plants, healthy animals, healthy humans, I think that's a good way to go. So The benefits of the base group then is we're doing our own thing, like I said earlier, and not waiting around for our national research organisation to do these things. We're doing them ourselves. Get up off our arses and, don't be complaining, just go and do it. So on the final note then, the geneticist will tell you they have all the answers, the nutritionist will tell you they have all the answers, the biologist will tell you they have the answers. There are lots of different solutions, and we have to try and educate ourselves and do our own little thing. So that's my spiel. Thanks, guys.
My name's Rob Coleman, and I farm with my dad Billy in North Cork. We're really in dairy country, and we've mostly tillage farm, but it's always had a few cattle and sheep, not because they make any money, just because Dad likes cattle and sheep. And that's kind of, very much a family farm. And what my dad taught me for years was just about the soil. We stopped, like a lot of lads in base, we stopped using the plough probably around 2000. And organic manures were always a big part of our business. Dad always said there's just more in them and it's just better. And that was the kind of foundation of soil health in our place forever and ever, before any base or anything else. And we used to dig. I couldn't say enough about just having a spade and just getting into your soil and digging and looking at it and kind of getting a feel for it. Dave Beecher mentioned in the Danu group about training your senses, and there's a point where you don't need the tools for certain stuff because you just feel where you are. You just kind of know what's good and what's bad. So we were doing that and everything was grand, and there's a lovely picture of Castlemagner, make you think everything's perfect down there. Jesus, it isn't. We have never put a big picture of slugs up there to start off with our bald patches in the wet corners, and we have plenty after the autumn we just had. But what we do have is a kind of an attitude of, look, we'll figure it out, and we'll figure out our problems, and we'll try and understand what's happening. And this is when I came to base, what I learned wasn't so much what do I do, I'll go home and I'll do it. There's kind of nearly a sort of after enough stupid questions at the start, you start coming up with some of your own answers. And when you come to things like this and you listen and you sit there and you kind of go, well, what about this next? And over the course of time, you kind of build your understanding first before you rush home and do anything. And I suppose that's where it started getting interesting with me and Billy, where I came home from base and I was saying, oh, look, Jesus, we need to start changing everything in the farm, and full of the joys of life and full of enthusiasm. And he's a great farmer, but he just kind of, thank God he slowed me down. He stopped me a bit because the rate of change in any of this stuff, because it's new, and what BASE is doing is it's taking the fabulous information that you'll hear at this conference, and last year's conference was incredible, and we've been to England, to Groundswell a few times, and myself and Tommy went to America there in January, and you hear all this information and this kind of, the basics are there, but to bring it home to Ireland, to hear what some lads are doing in Cork, and down the road from me, I didn't even know Tom Fooey was there. It's very encouraging to say that, like, the version of this in 1,000 mils of rain in Castlemagner, it's different in that field there, which is a nice loamy field, to some of the more clay content and the heavier land down further in our rainfall. And to take those things and actually do them. I find, you go mad reading and you're so enthusiastic at the start, and God, there's Albrechts, and we need to get a microscope, and there's these cover crops, and we need to buy a drill, and you sort of lose your way, and you say, geez, you get home after a conference full of enthusiasm, and you walk out the door and you say, what am I going to do now? And this was my start. I grew a cover crop. I started there. And to be fair, it was a successful cover crop, and I got a lot of enjoyment out of growing it because I like growing things. I get a lot of satisfaction out of seeing that there in that field, and there's Ned nearly lost in the middle of it. And this was the beginning of it. What will we do next? And Paddy, one of the lads in the base chat, goes all day, every day in the WhatsApp. Jesus, yeah, and just sort of park that from time to time, just so you can kind of, do as opposed to just learn, to actually put into practice. He said, what's the plan there? And I said, plan, it's not how we do things, really. I just really wanted to grow a cover crop, and over the course of time, finding your way along, sort of bit by bit. We always had sheep. I said that Dad loves the sheep, and he stuck his lambs in here for the winter, and we fenced it up. And he'd be cynical enough, and if you have a good idea in Castlemagner, it needs to be a very good idea to sort of pass judgment, sort of if there's a problem, you're going to hear about it. And that's fine, because it means you need to be adamant about what you're trying to do, and it needs to be sort of, a strong push behind, change. It needs to be, a definite yes or a no, because if you're kind of like, find your way along kind of willy-nilly in the middle, you're kind of maybe floating a bit. So he put his lambs in here, and he's looking at lambs a long, long time, and passed him by, and said, well, what should I think of the cover crop? And our discussions in the boardroom, the kitchen normally ends with one of us walking out the door. And it kind of said, well, I've never seen lambs lying down as much, I've never seen them trun down sort of, full bellies, kind of not wandering around grazing. And to be fair, they're getting their fill, they're getting their pick. There's no artificial fertilizer on this. This is just, just easy, to be fair. And this low dry matter, so there was no water involved, just fenced them in. And we'd fat lambs, and he said, oh yeah, we normally, 50, 53 kilos, oh Jesus, they're 57 kilos going to the factory, Jesus, and it's sort of, that didn't actually cost us any money, because they just got fatter than we thought. This is great. We didn't gain anything for the last, the extra weight. We didn't lose anything either. It's sort of like a bit of a success. So in this, as we found our way along, there have been sort of, things that haven't gone very well and things that have gone well. And as Mark said, you go to the base group and you say, Jesus, Gareth, I made a mess of this. And he'll say, wait till I tell you what I made the mess of. And this honesty in the group that you can, like, we'll go to this now and we'll listen, and half of what you learn is brilliant from Christine and people like that is unbelievable. But what you learn in the bar, as we were accused that there a minute ago, or driving between some of the visits when we go to the UK, from the other lads where they've gone wrong themselves, that maybe wouldn't say it in front of a group of people, but you can kind of have a chat, and even one-on-one, that gives you great encouragement. And things aren't perfect, and farming isn't perfect, and Castlemagner has its ups and downs now as it did before in the previous system, and not to put a higher standard on this new system going forward. So then we decided to push on a little bit, and what will we do next? I mean, that was grand. It was our driest land, and it was sort of easy. We're looking for situations to be successful here. There's a whole list of stuff that you can dive into, and it went wrong, and somebody might say, like Johnny now, who's doing it a long time, well, yeah, geez, I wouldn't have done that now. This is where I would have gone. So we picked our driest land to start with, and we grazed the animals because we were trying to mind it through our rainfall. This, moisture conservation here from a lot of people, and, drought tolerance. I mean, there was a drought last year, but generally in Cork with 1,000 mils of rain, moisture conservation isn't a problem for us. But having given out about that side of it, and we do tend to whinge, I spoke to Christine over lunch there, and just saying, like, we can grow things like, we have a mild climate in this country that we don't appreciate. When you get to Australia, you talk to them and he says, oh, we didn't have a crop this year, and you're kind of going, Jesus, the consistency of what we have to be able to use it, we have an abundance of growth. Now, it mightn't be, tropical, and a lot of the research and a lot of the knowledge comes from elsewhere, but stick it into Cork and see what happens, and keep trying and talk to lads and thrash it out, and we're finding our way along. So we grew a 9-way mix, got some advice from Philip Reich, and he said, what do I do here? He said, oh, a bit of this, bit of that, a few clovers, bits and bobs, and we fired it in the summer of 2018. And it was a success. It was a real success. And it looked gorgeous because we got a real mild winter and everything bloomed and we had bees and we did everything all the way to November. It was great PR, and to be fair, as the environmental conscience rises, nationally, all this stuff is coming into focus, and prefer to do it by choice through base than getting forced by somebody down along for cap. And you say, I've good conventional farmer friends who love the plough. And that's grand. I mean, I have to talk to those people too. They're not bad people. They just farm differently to me. And tolerance and respect between, I think here the organic and the conventional farmers, it's great that nobody's kind of having a go too much, because I know I'm a conventional farmer. I'm not happy about it, using any of the stuff I use. But I'm sort of trying to wean myself off it. Like when Andy spoke, he was fantastic that he's dropped his inputs by 50%. This is how I know how to farm. This is how my dad taught me how to farm. And if I'm going to change it, it has to be slow, steady change. And when Andy talked about try a bit here and try a field there, or what will I do when I go home, for anybody here is try a bit. What will grow, what will work for me? Talk to Dara about his flowers. Try something, or try 3 small things. So if something goes wrong, you're not betting the farm. And from there, then you'll have a bit of confidence. Because in this, the land will change, but the farmer has to change too. And it's not just about the technical doing of things. It's nearly, in base, we talk about treating the causes of problems, not the symptoms. There's a whole industry sitting on top of us treating symptoms all day, every day. But we're causing the problems ourselves maybe a little bit. And just to have that approach as you go by, if you keep fixing the problem you kept causing, and it's just onwards and onwards and onwards, and suddenly you don't know where you're going wrong, and everyone is sick of farming. And farming is more fun now, and it's more interesting, and there's a bit more meaning in it, because there's something wrong when I think about digging up potash in Kazakhstan and spreading it in crops in Ireland and selling whatever you're selling, because that can't keep going. But a lot of the answers here are inside the farm gate. It cost me feck all for the cover crop seed, and the sunshine is free, and nobody can tax that yet anyway. So I like that, harvesting sunshine and water. If I wasn't growing that cover crop in that field, I'd cut it at the end of the winter barley in July, and I'd plant beans in March. And the amount of sunshine and water that I've wasted, on top of the soil getting pounded by the rain, which is not supposed to get pounded by the rain, because you never see soil pounded by the rain in the natural world or exposed to the sunshine. You never see one thing growing, because it doesn't work in nature. That's where the deserts come from. Is all this stuff is kind of there, and like Mark said, you're kind of led by nature. You're guided along. So we planted me cover crop, and we put the cattle in, and sure, we figured it out as we went along, the size of the blocks and how to manage them, and how you manage those systems, or does it work or doesn't it work? Well, I would say I haven't got it working yet. I'm trying to get it working, or learn, or ask plenty of stupid questions, and sure, Mark has a lot of this done already, and lean on him, and making Limerick would have serious insight into cattle and animal health these animals thrived, and they came into the mart in March with big shaggy coats on them because they were out-wintered. They looked savage, and there was live weight gain over the winter that you nearly get in the summer. Like, so that's a win. And you know, where we have gone wrong, you sort of have maybe a few quid in the bank from this win over the winter, and with the store lambs as well, from our early our own lambs. We bought store lambs at the end of the drought last year, and there was no grass anywhere, and they were cheap. And then there was a shortage in January in the factory because there was many around. So we had a massive win there because we just fenced them in and they got fat as pigs on the cover crop. So we had that few quid in the bank as well, and it was reasonably successful. I'm a tillage farmer, so I love gear, so I wanted to buy gear. So buying gear is the best part of the job. I'm only joking because obviously soil is the foundation of everything. And I have this conversation with Billy all the time. Farmers love gear and they love cows and they love sheds and all that. But if you don't have your soil right, that's the foundation of everything else. And we were always kind of soil folks. And base is, what is it like? I mean, I'm for the farmer eternally because I'm a farmer and my dad was a farmer and the farmer's here. And I just get pissed off that we don't have our independence and we lost a lot of power as everybody is strong and keeping their kind of cut of the business above us. And then we kind of say that when we have the environment and the farmer in mind, that's more or less it. Basically trying to look after farmers and we're trying to look after the environment. So I got to buy my drill anyway. And I was trying to figure this out what Andy's doing 10 years later, and it's just incredible what he's doing in his dry part of Kent. I'm trying to do it in Castlemagner and trying to ask lots of stupid questions from the lads who've been doing this for 5 or 6 years. Some of it is grazed, some of it is ungrazed. We're trying to learn when to plant into it, what to do, and feel our way along. And sure, it does. It looks cool, like, and I like this. It's kind of satisfying and it's exciting. But then, you know, some of it is scary because you don't know if it's going to work when you're doing it or not. The bean is a great way to get going here because when you plant the bean, it's a big seed and it can take whatever the animal has done over the winter to the land, just without damaging land. You know, and animals can only damage land so much until it starts pouring rain in February, and you need to plan, take them off and put them back on again. What we did do, we sort of kept the thinking going. We were putting silage in some of the cover crops, and they damaged, you know, where the ring feeder was, and we sort of said, well, look, we'll put in a bit more oats in places where we are grazing this year, so there's a bit more roughage, so we're trying to do it without the silage this year. And we're sort of keep the thinking going, and I suppose we do a few all-breaks, and some lads are really good at that, and they love it, and you can kind of pick and choose and take what you like or what you don't like. Some lads are mad for the microbiology, some great compost lads there, and I suppose, you know, this is where I started, and I've kind of building away knowledge, and I suppose as it evolves, I'll keep changing and I'll keep kind of pushing on, but keeping the balance between just learning lots and not doing anything, and then just sort of go home and do something would be what I'd say to lads. There's Gareth next. Base has got a great social side as well, and I've got some great friends from it from 3 years, and like Mark said, we're not selling anything, like we're on the side of the farmer. It's 150 quid to join. And so that's it, we don't get funding from anybody. But there's a grassweed program that I'm involved with, and a lady came over from England, an expert in grassweeds, and she was talking away and she was saying this, and she was very good. And I sort of asked her a few questions, and she said, oh, the farmers are ahead of the research on this one. And I'm very impressed with the fact that she said it, because change happens from the ground up. We don't wait for people from the top down because they're too big and there's too much of a system there, you know, and they're slow to change. But you shouldn't look those places. That's not how it happens. This is how it happens. So have a go and have a cut. And just keep chatting about it and you'll find your way along. Thanks.
Hello, my name's Gareth Culligan. I'm a tillage farmer in County Louth. I started min-tilling in 2001 and then moved on to direct drilling in 2008 and eventually no-till in 2013. But I think my conservation ag journey only started when I joined Base. And that's when I learned, like, I didn't know anything about all-bracks or precision nutrition or mixing seed varieties. But I didn't even understand the 3 principles of conservation ag. And I think, look, we had them up there earlier on there, the no-till, diversification, rotation, and permanent cover. Like for years we were just direct drilling, and we were struggling because we weren't using the 3 principles together. We had a bad rotation, we were growing too much winter barley, and we were getting problems with brome and other weeds. And eventually we started to look into the conservation ag, and that's when we started to improve the rotation, using beans, rape, oats, adding them all into it. grown nearly less cereals. Some years we had 50% break crops. The pressure on the weeds started to ease, and that was a big change for me. But look, I only learned that from other members on base, Mark and Johnny and Robbie and a few others. So, look at a couple of things in the farm we've done. That's us there. The summer cover crops. I don't grow that many spring crops, so we have to grow summer cover crops. And people say to me, what's the point in spending money on cover crop seed if it's only going to be in the ground for 2 months? But you're getting the best 2 months of the year, you're getting the best time for growing, and you're covered in the ground the whole time. And if, like this year, the weather goes wrong, you've covered for the whole winter. You mightn't get your winter crop in. So we normally now, if we cut the winter barley, we'll sow a cover crop in, and I have spent up to €20 an acre on a summer cover crop. And then we'll go and sow winter beans or a spring crop, depending on the weather and the ground. So bear with me. That's a summer cover crop on the right-hand side, and that's the wet headland on the left. That was sown in June in the previous year, and that was sown after the winter barley. And we've sown winter beans into that after the summer cover crop. And we actually started companion cropping then. So we've beans and oats and wheat mixed in. We sowed the beans at 210 kilos, and we put the oats at 90 kilos a hectare. So we stopped. When we started first, we were just using pre-emerge sprays and herbicides, and then that was the first year. And the second year, then we cut out the pre-emerge, and we also cut the rate of the oats because the oats was getting too thick and nearly smothering out some of the beans. There, the picture on the left there now, it's hard to see it, but there's beans and oats. The oats nearly took over the beans at one stage. So look, we learned a lot from that. Like the beans, I think, finished up that year at 2.6 tonne. The next year we had beans at 1.3 tonne, and then the third year we had beans at 3 tonne an acre. So look, I think it's just a bit trial and error, and I think that's the thing about base. You get the courage to try these things, like to cut back the herbicides and the pre-emerge. So that was really, look at the main points about base. Like I think it's farmers educating farmers is the main point of base. Like we're not funded, we're just, as Rob said, it's €150 to join for the year. It's probably the best money you'll ever spend, I think, on farming. So look, I think I'll leave it at that, and thanks very much for your time. Thanks.